All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me for another installment of the product webinars brought to you by Paragon Films. This afternoon, we are going to be discussing another hand film product from Paragon that many of you are going to be familiar with, but hopefully we get you some additional information, something that's going to make you more effective out there in the field. I am Shawn Mitchell. I am the Paragon Film sales rep for Ohio and the Pittsburgh area. I work with Carla Thorne and Zach Poole and all the others that you know, and we're just very happy to be able to be doing this for you guys and hopefully bringing you something valuable here. So again, we're going to be talking about hand film. And as many of you know, Paragon is offering 3 hand films at this point. Our Spartan hand film, which is a cast conventional hand film that's known for its high clarity, high puncture resistance. This has been in the marketplace for many, many years. Paragon has been around for about 30 years itself, and Spartan hand film has been around almost as long as that. If you joined me this morning for the presentation on the new Titus hand film, then you know a little bit about that product now, and hopefully you got some good information there. I encourage you to join us again if you missed some of that presentation. We will be presenting that on Wednesday and Friday of this week as well. But today we're going to focus on torque. I know a lot of you are going to be very familiar with torque and some of the applications that you might prefer to bring it to, but hopefully we're just going to add some knowledge to the base that you already have and make you a little bit more effective when you're talking to your customers about it. So to begin with, to talk about torque, we're actually going to talk about what torque is not and problems that occur with other hand films, whether it be in application or in the manufacturing process of that film. So the first thing we're going to discuss is conventional film. Now, conventional film has obviously been around the longest. When you're looking at a roll of conventional hand film, you're essentially looking at a roll of machine film. It's produced in a very, very similar way. The film characteristics are very similar, the way it's wound on the roll. And that causes some issues. So typically we see that those films are harder to unwind. They obviously have much heavier roll weights. One of the big keys with those films is that they're easily damaged. If you drop them one time or bang them against the side of a pallet or something, that nicked edge is going to cause for a lot of unusable film. So this was something years and years ago the industry was trying to steer away from. That's why one of the big drivers with the eventual introduction of pre-stretched films that were more damage resistant. But the key thing I want to talk about when we're thinking of conventional hand films is how difficult they are to stretch to an optimum performance level. So like I said, a lot of hand films that are in a conventional formulation are essentially miniaturized versions of machine films. And we all well know that a lot of machine films are designed to stretch to 200%, 250%, even 300% and on. And when you think about taking a hand film that has the same capabilities in terms of how much potential stretch is in that film, it causes a lot of problems in concern to consistency of wrap and load containment. So if you've got an operator that at 7 a.m. is bright and ready for the day and ready to wrap loads and they're going to do a great job that day and they're using a conventional hand film, they're going to be stretching that film a lot more when they're fresh and not as fatigued than they will be at 3 p.m. that afternoon when your warehouse is 100 degrees, they've been working all day and they're starting to just get tired all the way around. Their consistency of wrapping each load is going to diminish as the day goes on. And that's because there's just so much potential stretch left in that hand film that you can never really get a consistent stretch out of it. And I'd encourage you, if you've got a sample roll of some conventional hand film laying around your house, grab the roll, unwind a little bit, and start trying to stretch it out. And you're probably going to end up halfway or most of the way across the room before that film really locks out on you. So you can see why when you're wrapping loads, if there's that much potential stretch left in the film, it's a real issue in regard to load containment. And load containment is our primary purpose. So when we've got a hand wrap load that's got this film on it that's just ready to continue to stretch, by the time that load hits the back of the truck and starts its way down the road, the first time the truck hits the brakes heavily, takes a sharp turn, and that load shifts, that film is going to continue to do its job and continue to stretch, and you're going to lose all your containment and you're going to suffer damage in shipment, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So those are some things to keep in mind when we're talking about conventional hand films. Now on the other side of that, when we're talking about pre-stretched hand film, which has been available in the marketplace for a long time, you have to know a little bit about how pre-stretched hand film is manufactured. So I'm hopeful that some of you have seen actual extrusion lines in operation and then seen the secondary process, the way they pre-stretch hand film and rewind it onto the cores. But you're looking at a two-stage process where a master roll of machine film is made, and then it's run through a secondary manufacturing process where that film is essentially sent through pre-stretch heads that look very similar to what you would find on a roll carriage on any piece of equipment. That's what puts the stretch into that film, and then it's rewound onto the rolls. So that secondary process adds a lot of room for error. The gauge is very hard to keep consistent when you're sending that film through those pre-stretch heads. You get a lot of variations in the width of the film, how wide you're making it at any given time. And then one of the key problems that we've seen is the footage control on those rolls. It's very hard to dial in. So when you think about film being pre-stretched and rewound onto another core, and then there's some level of film recovery happening after that roll is finished, if you aim to get a 1,500-foot roll, you're actually going to end up with less film on that roll once the film has recovered. So Paragon was very intentional when they were thinking about pre-stretched hand film and conventional hand film. And about 15 years ago, the product Torque came out onto the market. So Torque is neither a conventional hand film, nor is it a true pre-stretched hand film. Torque is made via a patented process. Paragon is the only manufacturer that's making film this way. And the reason we're making film this way is because we're able to cut out some of those typical problems you see with a traditional pre-stretch film as far as gauge variation, width variation, and footage control. So we say Torque is manufactured and oriented in line. That means we essentially end up with what looks like a pre-stretch product. When you hold your Torque roll up against your competitor's pre-stretch roll, they look very, very similar because our goal is to have a similar film in the way it behaves, but it's manufactured in a completely different way. So since we only have that single manufacturing process when it comes to Torque, we're able to produce a much more consistent product than what we see in the marketplace when it comes to pre-stretch film. Now, the characteristics of Torque compared to pre-stretch are pretty similar. We're talking lighter weight rolls, so you should be having conversations with your operators and your purchasing agents about roll weights, and obviously safety is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the conversation out there. We see it all the time. There's just less fatigue from operators when they're carrying around a 3.5 foot or 3.5 pound roll rather than a 5, 6, 7, 8 pound roll. And then of course, lighter weight and the need for less plastic means that they're going to be having a lower cost per pallet, which is really one of our main goals here. Now, other than a lower cost per pallet, we're obviously looking for that higher containment force. So we had that lengthy conversation a minute ago about how a conventional film will continue to stretch and stretch and stretch, and you can never lock it out. Torque is designed with the complete opposite in mind. We want to have a minimal amount of force needed to lock that film out. So your operator on the factory floor, when they're hand wrapping their loads, they get a nice consistent pull and the film is locked out. Most of the work has already been done for them, but that also means they're going to get very, very consistent loads throughout the day. It doesn't matter in the afternoon when they're starting to get tired. And remember that, warehouse is getting hot and they've been at it for 6 or 7 hours. That film takes very little effort to get that containment force on the load. And that's also combined with the fact that torque's got a much easier unwind coming off the roll than a conventional hand film, which is much harder to get off the roll and takes more force in general. Then we've got the same features that a traditional pre-stretch film would have in the damage resistance with folded edges, and those also add strength. So torque's offered in a full range of gauges. We make torque down to 6 micron all the way up to 13 micron, which gives a great cross section when you guys are in the field of options to take not only against conventional films that are heavier gauge, but also those lighter weight pre-stretch films that are getting down into the 6, 7, and 8 micron. There's a torque product that can be paired up with either one of those, and you've got more than a reasonable chance to be successful because torque is such a high performing product. And we've talked quite a bit about why it's easier and more consistent to apply. Going back to footage control and the manufacturing process, this was again something that Paragon took a lot of time in our engineering processes to ensure that when we say you're getting a 1,500 foot roll of torque, you're actually giving your customer a 1,500 foot roll of torque and not a 1,450 foot roll. So on top of easy unwind, another feature of this product is that we made sure you can use the film all the way down to the core. With pre-stretch films and that secondary manufacturing process, they're notoriously difficult to get the film wound in such a way that you can actually use it all the way down to the core. It's not a problem that you're going to see with torque. And so this is a product that you should be using to continue your conversation about source reduction, reducing the amount of packaging costs needed, but also reducing the amount of plastic needed in any given application. And we're going to see some case studies here in a minute that are really great representations of getting over that hump with people that are married to conventional hand film formulations and being able to show them real data in regard to a torque product that can do the job for them and do it better. So here's just a quick look at some of the SKUs when it comes to the torque lineup. There are actually many more than this. Like I said, we've got a product for every application regarding width and gauge. And you can see on that list, some of those are bulk packed at 2,000 feet. Some of them are case packed at 1,500. Something that's important to remember when you're talking about any Paragon product is we are very in tune with collecting the data necessary to develop our products, continue to push them forward, and make sure we're putting the best possible products out into the marketplace. So things like constantly working with the resin suppliers and making sure we are using the best resins to net the result that we would like out of each one of our products, constantly looking at our processes and how we're engineering, and then just doing the legwork in the sense of trials and testing to make sure that we're giving you guys the best tools to take to your customers out there. So here's just a quick snapshot of a field test, and we're going to get into some more in a little bit more detail. But if you look at this test, you're looking at a 12 micron conventional film compared to Torque X, which is a 6 micron film. So you're basically looking at a 47 gauge versus a 24 gauge. Now, what is always of paramount importance to Paragon, and if you talk to Carla or any of us, we're always going to talk about that two-prong method as far as load containment and cost per pallet when we do a usage evaluation. So the ultimate goal is, can we meet or surpass your current containment standards And can we do that with less film used? And with a product like Torque, the answer is usually a resounding yes if we get that opportunity to do the audit. So in this scenario, a load was wrapped 5 times. The testing method was using the torsion tool. And you can see that we reduced the amount of plastic or the amount of film used on this load by 50%. And that's taking a 6 micron Torque product up against a 47 gauge conventional film. It seems like a big jump, but when you consider all those factors that differentiate Torque from a conventional film, it makes sense that we would be able to get the containment numbers where we want them to be, which are actually better, and use a lot less film on the load. So we're going to take a quick look at 2 case studies, and this first one is Torque 13 micron versus a competitor's 30 micron conventional film. So this is another example that we're taking a Torque product, and this is the heaviest Torque product that we manufacture. This would be equivalent to a 51 gauge, and this is a 120 gauge conventional film. So I really like this example because we've all run into those end users out there, those prospects that we're trying to get in front of that use 120 gauge conventional hand film and they think that's all they can ever use. This is the perfect graphic representation of you can go from 120 gauge down to a 51 gauge Torque and you can net them better results across the board. So there was a reduction in the film usage from 7 ounces to 3.9 ounces. You can see down in the bottom chart that the containment numbers were up. Because we were using less film on each load and we were optimizing their film usage for them and doing that not only through showing them a different, better film, but also remembering that the training portion is on us. It's our job to make sure we're showing them how to use a product like Torque in the right way. And there's a video out there of Carla Thorne that's from several years ago, but if you guys don't have a link to it, please reach out to us and we'll send it to you. It's a great tutorial on how to wrap pallets the right way when it comes to Torque and when it comes to hand film in general. But when we're working with our customers and we're showing them the right way to use this hand wrap, and we're taking their cost per pallet down almost 20 cents, this customer in particular is not a huge user of film, but I like the example because it's that 120 gauge versus that 51 gauge Torque. So a 25% savings, if you were to magnify that into an end user that's using, something closer to a truckload of hand film a month, these savings numbers annualized become staggering. And this is what we like to see. So in this particular instance, we're showing them some sustainability savings. So they're saving 119 rolls of film a year, which is roughly 1,000 pounds of plastic waste. These sustainability numbers are becoming more and more important to present. We are running into more and more companies when we're out there in the field with you guys that have either a sustainability manager or some sort of sustainability team, and they need to present savings to their corporate headquarters at least once a year to show them what they're doing to incite a reduction in their consumables. So this portion of the report is always very important. So we're going to move on to another example. And this example is a Torque 6 micron against a pre-stretched product. So this is an 8.4 micron pre-stretch film, which is approximately a 24 gauge up against a 29 or a 30 gauge film. So this was a food packaging operation, and they were using a lot of hand wrap internally. They were also using hand wrap on their loading docks to quickly wrap pallets and get them out the door. So in this scenario, we took 6.5 ounces of that 8.4 micron pre-stretch film. We ran 2 tests with the Torque, and we actually had the operator perform these tests. So on that second test there where you see the 4.3 ounces, We gave a little more guidance on wrapping techniques and showing him how he could do things a little bit differently and get a little more yield out of the film. And that led to the third test there where he got 4 ounces on the pallet. So right away, you can see the reduction in the amount of film used. And then just as important, those containment numbers are rock solid. We either exceeded or met their current standard, and that was something that they were very, very happy with. So we showed them they could use less film, get their containment numbers, and see a cost savings at the end of the year. We also presented them with some sustainability savings because this is something they were interested in seeing. So these numbers are a little bit higher than that last example. But again, if you kind of extrapolate this out into a very, very large end user, you can only imagine what these numbers start to look like. It's important for you guys to be having these conversations about whether or not your prospects or your end users have some sort of sustainability initiative in place. And if you can help them to meet those numbers, is that something that would be interesting enough for them to give you time to come in and perform an audit? And if you'll notice, we generated a client analysis report on both of these accounts. That's because there's no reason we shouldn't be doing a full-scale film audit when it comes to hand film, just like we do with machine film. We take the same measurements, the same data, we plug it into the client analysis tool, and we can present things like cost savings and sustainability savings with hand film in the same way, rather than just handing off a roll and asking them if it works. So we've seen success with torque across all manner of industries, applications. These are just a few. You guys probably have quite a few yourself that you could share. Torque has been around for a long time, and we've had a lot of time to get traction in the marketplace with it. There's really not an application I've seen yet. And again, I point back to that 120 gauge conventional hand film. There's not an application out there yet that I haven't felt comfortable with bringing a torque product into when they're using something heavier. So when we're talking about selling transit protection film with the benefits of lower cost and less waste, torque should certainly be something that comes to mind. Again, we've got that great range of 6 to 13 micron. You should be able to compete with any pre-stretch and any conventional film you're running into in the marketplace. We've been doing this long enough to build a great history. We want to talk to our customers and train them about consistency, not only consistency in the product, but consistency in their methods. And just the general ease of application and effort it takes for them to standardize their loads, because a lot of hand wrap application, there is no standardization. When we give them a product like this that locks out quickly, has high holding force, we give them that opportunity to standardize. So I hope you guys learned something about torque today. Like I said, I know you all have a little bit of experience with it. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to myself if you're here in Ohio, or just contact your appropriate rep. We'll be happy to get you information, send you the spec sheets, get you anything you need. So I appreciate you guys joining me, and you have a great rest of your day.